Slides are a bit categorical this morning. This is not the reading from Luke, which will come in a few moments, but the devotional reading. I'll read to you from the weird and wonderful article in Transcend. It is a true proverb that if you live with a lame man, you will learn to halt. Working through the memories of childhood is a task each of us eventually faces. Just as an alcoholic family system contributes to alcoholism, so too does a family who lives at the expense of individual members contribute to adults who don't take care of themselves. They grow up thinking that they simply don't matter. They may have no boundaries. They want to be loved but have no self-love. They always put another's needs ahead of their own. They always put another's needs ahead of their own. In short, they're not taking care of themselves, nor are they being self-protective. Others exploit them. They justify it by saying service before self. Sometimes adults who had their growth blocked in childhood go too far the other way. They might become totally self-absorbed and narcissistic. In other words, excessively interested in themselves. Either way, the important thing is to acknowledge what the family situation was. Simply knowing that it was real, not a figment of our imagination, can help us to heal and move on. When we get the spiritual breakthrough in our mind and soul that we didn't cause the pain that was present in our family system, then we can stop blaming ourselves. For others, acknowledging their role in causing the pain is the saving truth that sets them free and changes their destiny. Suffering takes place in families and organizations, in whole nations. When unhealthy interactions and ways of relating over a long time frustrate or block the emotional development of its members. What does that mean? Usually happens when in families, members are not committed to the growth of each other. Love others as much as you love yourself. And when one or some members live at the expense of other family members. The dominant person forces others into rigid roles. And irrational family rules and myths go unchallenged. This is the way it has always been and how it will always be. Healthy groups have members who are committed to self-love as well as love of others as much as they love themselves. They are committed to their own growth as well as to the growth of others. Members develop relationships and ways of relating and talking to each other. And these ways engender trust and warmth, support, sharing, freedom. This is what we're endeavoring to do as people of faith. Naturally, when you do this in your family, it has flow-on effects for future generations, on your children's children. They will know what it means to have life in all of its fullness. We now look at the shadow side of Christ and his temptations. There's a disease of perfectionism in Christianity, in our culture. Rather than Wesley's fine statement in the 1700s, perfection in love as the goal, people have the disease of perfectionism. They think they have to match a certain standard of achievement or a certain standard of behavior to render themselves acceptable. Acceptable to who? In this story we see Christ who is rendered in a kind of a perfect mode, but we also see the struggles within his soul. We see, if you like, his shadow side, his will to power, his will to be some kind of marvelous miracle worker that through his magic tricks will make people follow him and only him. Or his will to rule and lord it over all of the kingdoms of the earth. That's what Pilate and Caesar Augustus did. You might ask yourself, what in the story is about you, and the way that power works in our own nation and in our relationships? Now Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, left the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wild. For 40 wilderness days and nights he was tested. He ate nothing during those days, and when the time was up, he was hungry. The devil, playing on his hunger, gave the first test. Hey, since you're God's son, command this stone to turn into a loaf of bread. Jesus answered by quoting Deuteronomy. It takes more than bread to really live. For the second test, he led him up and spread out all the kingdoms of the earth on display at once. Then the devil said, hey, they're yours in all their splendor to serve your pleasure. I'm in charge of all of them and can turn them over to whomever I wish. Worship me, and they're yours. The whole works. Jesus refused again, back in his refusal with the words from Deuteronomy. Worship the Lord your God, and only the Lord your God. Serve him with absolute single-heartedness. For the third test, the devil took Jesus to Jerusalem and put him on top of the temple. He said, if you are God's son, jump. It is written, isn't it, that he has placed you in care of angels to protect you. They will catch you. You won't so much as stub your toe on a stone. Yes, said Jesus. And it is also written, don't you dare tempt the Lord your God. That completed the testing. The devil retreated temporarily, lying in wait for another opportunity. The word of God for the people of God.
Amen.
Breathe. Don't forget to breathe, and breathe easily, and rest deeply into your chair. Exhale and let go. Come back to your true nature, your essential self, your deeper self. Breathe. And turn off your mobile phones. A few moments of quiet for your relaxation, for your meditation.
Very good.
Now pray your prayer. Your prayer for yourself, for others, for this church. Everlasting God, we thank you for the night view of the world which comes in the darkness of our despair, in the dark night of our soul. Yes, we thank you even for this, the night view of the world, so that we can better see the light shining in the darkness. Everlasting God, we remember with gratitude to you all the springs of joy, renewal, and recreation that are our common heritage and our common lot. We thank you for so great a gift of being alive and having some hope to give to others. We offer to you and to others our dedication and our response. Everlasting God, beyond all and under all of life, there is the intimate sense of being upheld and cradled by strength that is not of our making, something that gives to life a quality of integrity and meaning, which we of ourselves could never generate. The gentle upheaval in the heart, in our heart, reminding us to lift up our heads and be of good courage. We remember this and we give thanks. Our Father, our Father, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Yours is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever.
Amen. Too late. And too much. The luck. The luck.
Would you like to bring you the nod? She's giving me the nod, so when you want to say it, give me the head nod. Come on. It's a beautiful song, that last one. the $65 question, why are people voting for Donald Trump? Who cares? You might say it's not terribly relevant, but it is when you look at the issue of sense of fulfillment. Where's your sense of fulfillment versus a sense of anger? All in the context of being tempted to be something less than who you are. And the temptations are not sinful or evil, but they're part of our shadow side. It's a Jungian term, as you probably know, the shadow side being that aspect of ourselves that is real, those sort of primal motivations to kill people who happen to be against us. It's sort of a childlike aspect of us. And unless we're in touch with that, instead of betraying it or pushing it down or repressing it, unless we can be in touch with the shadow side, those raw emotions, then we can never know who we really are. And we can't use those raw emotions for good instead of evil. So why are people voting for Trump? Any thoughts? There's no right or there's no wrong answer. Yes, Chris?
I think it's a bit like Pauline Hanson. If the two major parties spend all their time trying to get re-elected, the people feel forgotten.
Yeah. It's on the money. I know this from talking to my brother who lives in Middle America and has had a long time looking for a job. And I know this from people who have been interviewing people at Trump rallies and what they're saying to them. They're angry, apparently, over the global financial crisis. In fact, nothing's changed. If you want to come down to the religious or spiritual level, they're angry because they've lost their power. They don't feel anybody is getting in there and fighting for them. They've lost a sense of personal power and a sense of power for their destiny. And as we said yesterday at the retreat, power is not bad. It's neutral. The question is, what will you do with that power? Will you use it to lay waste and destroy and manipulate people? Jesus was tempted to do that. Look at all these kingdoms. Yours. Because they're mine, said the devil, said Jesus' shadow side. Just bow down, worship me. You can control all these lives of all these people across all the kingdoms of the earth. Now do what you want. Of course, it's not real. People have realized they wanted to believe. They believed and wanted to believe that Wall Street cared about them. That political parties cared about their welfare and prosperity. And maybe some of them do. But they've been disenchanted and they've been disabused of that myth that Wall Street cares about them. We mentioned the film The Big Short last Sunday, and I do encourage you to see it. You have Margot Robbie, the great Australian actress, sitting in a bubble bath explaining the subprime mortgage crisis. They say, we don't understand this stuff either, so don't worry if you don't understand what happened, but just keep in mind that the people we thought were captains of industry and finance, seems like they've revolted. The revolt of the elites. And so the question is posed, if you don't have money and you don't have power, how do we as people of faith help people to regain some sense of power? Get organised. I'm trying to work it out too, Coral. But I know from the stories of the Old and New Testament, from Elijah and the Christ of our faith, they got people organised. And they got people organised around those eternal values of their faith. To do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly. We looked at Jesus' mission statement where he said, I've come to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord's favour, which, as we mentioned yesterday, he was picking right out of the book of Leviticus from that very phrase, that every 50th year people would have their debts forgiven, according to Leviticus 25 and what Moses said. The father of the nation said it. Now that doesn't work well if you're lending money to someone. But for all those people who fell into slavery and tenancy on someone else's land, they could get their family home back every 50 years. It was a way of equalizing the balance of justice. So you get people organized if you don't have money. And you get them organized around those principles, if you like the old language, what God wants. And we know what that is. So the question we looked at in the retreat yesterday is, how do you help people recover a sense of power when they feel powerless? And a sense of power for their destiny. Not putting bums on seats. Using your gifts and competencies in a way that helps a person the most, or does the most good for the most people. A key question. Flick forward. We've often been said that Jesus went around gathering disciples, and he certainly did that, but that story's been put in a way which prevents us from being real. It makes us just institutional people. In other words, it suggests to us when Jesus gathered disciples, that's what we're supposed to do. We want to make everybody a disciple of Christ. I'm not even sure what that means. But I think what it means is just a dressed up example of putting bums on seats. But think about it like this. What if Christ wasn't making disciples? What if Christ was actually Christ, where he listened? His was a listening presence, a non-anxious presence. He wasn't trying to make anyone follow him for the sake of following him. I believe, personally, having studied the voice imprint of Jesus, what we actually know about the historical Jesus, that it was more like this, and how we should be. He would come up to people, Peter, James, and John, pretty much say, what's happening in your life? What do you think is wrong with our country?
Going to the pub.
Going to pub. And that's what a lot of people said to him. Rather than saying, come and be my disciple. There was a sense, a note of urgency. But it was basically a God who came to them and helped them. And listened. And actually said, are you on about the same sort of things that I care about, that I'm passionate about? Well, if you are, let me help you. Let's join together. And let's do something. But the church has taken that and sort of encapsulated and said, we must make disciples of Christ. Rather than saying to people who come, or people we meet, not just people who come to our door, but people who we meet in the community, where is your sense of hope at this stage of your life? Where have you felt like you're powerless? Talk to me. Well, you know what? I felt like that too. But I know something that's really good. I have this church that I go to, and we're having a fish and chip night or whatever. We're talking about violence against women, what we can do about it, or whatever it is. So we're dealing from that situation as equals rather than having to make people conform to our own institutional view of what they should be. Conformity is shameful. Paul said that. He said, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. And he had churches that were as diverse as the United Nations, right around the Mediterranean basin. And yet here we are, still, seeing people who want to conform and making people conform. Rather than, I think, taking the approach of Christ, which is to say, in your search for power and individuality, in your search for meaning, in your search for hope, in your search for community, for being known, how can I help you? How can we share our common wisdom? Because the power we have together is greater than the power we ever have alone. So this was Jesus' mission statement, which we've talked about in the last couple of Sundays. It's specific, and it's not trying to get people to conform to be his disciples or his minions, to be his little handmaidens. It's working with people about what they care about. And then it's taking the next step, which will be remembering in about 5 weeks. It's going up to Jerusalem. It's going up to Jerusalem to confront the powers and principalities. If you like, it was a spiritual rebirth that ended in death for the Christ of our faith. But I believe this is what he was doing on Good Friday, of bringing that home to Pilate and Herod and the high priest. So I hope that as we go forward into Lent, we'll be thinking about a God who comes to us to help us. Therefore, when people come to our church, we don't ask them, how can you help us? We say, how can we help you? Because that's how we've been treated by the good Lord, the touch of grace. A helpless baby who comes to us at Christmas and helps us by evoking our compassion. A tortured slave nailed to the cross on Good Friday, Christ, who evokes our compassion. A God who comes to us and helps us. In life, people who come to us and help us. So we say to people who come to this church, how can we help you? Because we are people of faith. And that's what Christ did. We'll be talking about some more of this a bit later in some other Sundays. This is what we addressed yesterday in the retreat. I'll just pause there for a moment before we finish to say, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. Is there anything you would like to share personally in the safety of this place about some insights that may have come to you yesterday about your sense of fulfillment or mission, your search for personal power? Or anything that the readings today have instigated within you? Me too.
When I came to this church, I was not looking for anything specific. But what it brought me and what I had gained and what I'm constantly experiencing is hope. Hope. I see around me people who are kind and generous. In this church there is no animosity, people don't fight with each other, people don't put each other down. There is nothing that is negative about it. There's no gossip. It's almost unknown in this society when people don't gossip about each other. So it gave me a sense of that there are places where people can gather, feel safe, be themselves. That's the individual aspects. We don't necessarily criticize somebody who dresses differently or does something in a different way. We simply acknowledge that that person has a right to be who they are. And so for me, it's hope.
Thanks, Tina. As they say in the Shawshank Redemption, they're sitting in the prison yard, and one of the characters says, I think hope is the best thing in life. And the other person, perhaps a bit of a cynic, Morgan Freeman, says, don't fill your head with stupid ideas, you just let yourself down. Maybe hope is the best thing. Anyone else want to share their thoughts?
I couldn't stay for the afternoon, but the only thought I had was that if we enrich and deepen our own lives in faith, then God will give us what we have for the people we meet in need, and that's where we can all start.
Thanks. A person who, excellent comments, a person who is alive within themselves, who is following their bliss, who is following their sense of fulfillment and passion in life, is not a selfish person. It's a person who is alive brings other people alive. And if they are following their bliss or passion in life, guess what? They come to you to help you. It's not all about them.
Otherwise you got nothing.
That's right, otherwise you got nothing. And so finally it's about identity, integrity, autonomy, and power. Power for the good, to build people up, not to quench a dimly burning wick, as Isaiah put it, but to keep it burning bright, the light of hope. And I hope will be this for our children as well. in this
Yeah,
place.
that's what you said.
Although everybody now is an important sacrament, which is generosity, your generosity, which really does help our church. That comes in the form of your ideas, your pastoral care for each other and for people in the community, and also money is one of those. We'll now receive your